Hey, welcome back. Tonight we're diving into something that will make you question everything you think you know about medieval prophecy, witchcraft, and the stories we tell ourselves about the past. In 1530, a woman in Yorkshire predicted that Cardinal Thomas Wolsey would see the city of York but never enter it. Days later, he died en route, the prophecy fulfilled. That same woman supposedly knew the names of visitors she'd never met, performed impossible magic in front of nobility, and predicted events that wouldn't happen for over a century after her death. But here's what they don't tell you. There's no proof she ever existed, and the proof that does exist, it contradicts itself at every turn, gets more elaborate with each telling, and was written decades, sometimes over a century, after she supposedly died. The story you're about to hear isn't just about a witch. It's about how legends are manufactured, how the line between truth and fiction dissolves over time, and how an entire industry can be built on a foundation of absolutely nothing. So settle in, dim the lights, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, because tonight we're meeting Mother Shipton, and I promise you, by the end of this, you won't be sure whether you just heard a ghost story or a con that's been running for 400 years. Let's begin. Picture this. It's 1641. Charles I sits on the throne of England. The country is lurching towards civil war. Religious tensions are boiling over. People are choosing sides, Parliament or King, Puritan or Anglican. Everyone can feel it coming. The violence, the bloodshed, the world turning upside down. In times like these, people look for answers. They want to know what's coming. They want someone to tell them it'll be okay, or at least to tell them how bad it's going to get so they can prepare. They want a prophet, and someone in London decides to give them one. A printer named Richard Lowndes publishes a pamphlet. 7 pages, that's it. 7 pages that will birth a legend that survives to this day. The pamphlet is called The Prophecy of Mother Shipton, and it tells the story of a woman, surname Shipton, first name unknown, who lived during the reign of Henry VIII and possessed the terrifying gift of seeing the future. But here's where it gets strange. This pamphlet appears in 1641, more than 80 years after Mother Shipton supposedly died, over a century after the events it describes allegedly took place. And in those 80 plus years, silence, total silence, no other records, no contemporary accounts, no letters, no trial documents, no church records. No one in the 1530s through 1640s wrote, "Hey, remember that witch who predicted everything?" No one referenced her. No one mentioned her name. Just this one pamphlet appearing out of nowhere like a ghost at a séance, telling us about a woman who could see through time itself. Think about that for a moment. If someone today published a pamphlet claiming to have the prophecies of a woman who lived in the 1940s, would you believe them? Especially if there were no records of this woman from the 1940s themselves? No newspaper articles, no photographs, no letters, nothing? You'd be skeptical. You'd ask questions, you'd want proof. But in 1641, in a country on the brink of civil war, people wanted to believe, needed to believe. The story the pamphlet tells is simple. In 1530, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, King Henry VIII's right-hand man, one of the most powerful figures in all of England, is planning a trip north to York. This is significant. Wolsey is the Lord Chancellor. He's rich beyond measure. He lives in palaces that rival the king's. He's the second most powerful person in the entire kingdom. Word spreads that he's coming to York. People are preparing for his arrival. It's a big deal. And then Mother Shipton makes her prediction. Wolsey will see York, but he will never enter it. It's cryptic, specific enough to be interesting but vague enough to be mysterious. What does that even mean? How can you see a city but not enter it? When Wolsey hears about this prediction, he's not amused. He's furious. This woman is essentially predicting his failure, his humiliation. And Cardinal Wolsey does not tolerate disrespect. He sends 3 of the most powerful men in the realm to confront her: the Duke of Suffolk, Lord Percy, and Lord Darcy. These aren't minor players. These are men who command armies, men who have the king's ear, men who could have you arrested, tried and executed with a single word. They arrive at her house in Yorkshire. They're expecting, some cowering peasant woman? Some trembling, terrified fortune teller begging for mercy? But when they knock on her door, something impossible happens. She opens it, looks at them, and greets each man by name. "Good day, Duke of Suffolk, Lord Percy, Lord Darcy, won't you come in?" The men are stunned. They've never met this woman before. They've never been to this part of Yorkshire. They didn't send word ahead that they were coming. How does she know who they are? She invites them in like they're old friends, like she's been expecting them. She offers them cakes and ale by the fire, sits them down, makes them comfortable. And when they finally gather themselves enough to press her about her prophecy, she calmly repeats it. Wolsey might see York, but he'll never enter it. The Duke of Suffolk stands up. He's angry now, threatening. If the Cardinal does make it to York, he says, she'll burn for this. They'll drag her to the stake themselves. And that's when she demonstrates her power. Without a word, she takes her handkerchief and tosses it into the fire. The flames are roaring. The cloth should catch immediately, should burn to ash in seconds. But it doesn't burn. It sits there in the flames, untouched, unsigned, as if the fire itself is afraid of her. Then she takes her wooden staff and throws that in too. Wood, dry wood, the kind that practically explodes when it touches flame. It doesn't burn either. The 3 men watch in silence. You can imagine what they're thinking, what they're feeling, the fear creeping up their spines. Because this isn't a trick. This isn't sleight of hand. They can see the flames, feel the heat, but the handkerchief and staff just sit there, defying every law of nature. This, she says, pointing at the fire, shows that I'll be fine. Then she turns to each man and tells them their futures. To Suffolk, she says cryptically that he'll be as low as she is one day. To Percy, she says he'll be buried in York, but his head will be stolen and carried to France. To Darcy, she speaks of war and violence, but promises he'll kill no one. The men leave. They're unsettled, but not entirely convinced. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe there's an explanation. But they can't shake the feeling that something impossible just happened. And then Wolsey begins his journey north. He travels for days, makes it all the way to Yorkshire, all the way to Cawood Castle, which sits on a hill overlooking the Vale of York. From the castle windows, he can see the city of York in the distance, the cathedral spires, the city walls. He can literally see it with his own eyes. He's so close. But before he can enter the city, messengers arrive. He's been arrested, charged with treason. The king has turned on him. His fall from grace is complete and total. He's forced to begin a journey back to London, to face trial, to face, probably, execution. He never makes it. Wolsey dies at Leicester, en route to his trial. Some say it was natural causes. Some say poison. Some say he died of a broken heart. The humiliation of his downfall too much to bear. But one thing is certain, he never entered York. Mother Shipton's prophecy has come true. The story is chilling, specific, verifiable even. We know Wolsey really did die before reaching York. Historical records confirm it. It's documented fact. But here's what should make your skin crawl. This pamphlet was published 111 years after these events supposedly occurred. Think about that. 111 years. Anyone alive in 1641 knew how Wolsey died. It was ancient history by then. It was in every history book. It was taught to school children. Everyone knew the story of the Cardinal's fall. Predicting something that everyone already knows happened isn't prophecy, it's just storytelling. And the story is only beginning. So we've got a pamphlet from 1641 claiming a Yorkshire woman predicted Cardinal Wolsey's fate in 1530. Impressive, except for that whole published a century later problem. But remember those other predictions Mother Shipton supposedly made? The ones to the Duke of Suffolk, Lord Percy, and Lord Darcy? Let's look at those for a second, because this is where the cracks really start to show. This is where you can see the con falling apart if you look closely enough. Suffolk, she said, would be as low as she was one day. But Charles Brandon, the Duke of Suffolk in 1530, never fell from grace. Not only did he not fall, he thrived. He died in 1545, still one of Henry VIII's closest friends, still wealthy and powerful and comfortable, which, given how many people Henry had executed by that point, is actually quite an achievement. Now you could argue she was talking about his son-in-law, Henry Grey, who later also became Duke of Suffolk and was executed during Mary Hay's reign. That would fit the prophecy better. Grey was indeed brought as low as possible, beheaded on Tower Hill after his daughter's failed attempt to claim the throne. But that's the problem with vague predictions, isn't it? You can make them fit almost anything if you try hard enough. It's like those horoscopes that say, you'll face a challenge today, and then you burn your toast and think, wow, so accurate, such wisdom, much prophecy. You can retrofit any vague statement onto any outcome if you're creative enough. Lord Percy was supposed to be buried in York, with his head stolen and taken to France. Percy, better known as Anne Boleyn's first love, the man whose engagement to Anne was broken so Henry could have her, died in 1537. He was buried in Middlesex, not York, and his head, as far as anyone can tell, stayed exactly where it was supposed to stay, attached to his body, in England. No French vacation for Percy's skull. Strike two, and Darcy, she told him he'd go to war but kill no one. Thomas Darcy was indeed involved in the Pilgrimage of Grace Uprising in 1537. That was a massive rebellion against Henry's religious reforms. Thousands of people marched. There was violence. There were battles. You could call it a war, I suppose, though it was really more of a rebellion, an uprising, a doomed attempt to push back against the king's dissolution of the monasteries. But then Darcy was captured, tried for treason, and executed on Tower Hill. So less going to war and more committing treason and losing your head over it. And the prediction that he'd kill no one? Well, we don't have records of him personally killing anyone, but that's true of most nobles. They commanded troops, they gave orders, they didn't usually do the actual killing themselves. It's such a vague statement that it could apply to almost anyone. So we've got one accurate prediction out of 4, and that one accurate prediction, Wolsey not making it to York, is about an event that was well documented history by the time anyone wrote it down as a prophecy. But wait, it gets better. After telling us about these predictions, the pamphlet suddenly launches into a whole series of other prophecies Mother Shipton supposedly made. Prophecies about the King and Queen of Scotland coming to England. That would be James VI of Scotland, becoming James I of England in 1603, uniting the Scottish and English crowns, after Elizabeth I died childless. It was a huge deal, a Scottish king ruling England. The old enemies finally united under one crown. She predicted a great war between Scotland and England. Well, there were several of those over the centuries. Take your pick. The wars of Scottish independence, the various border conflicts, the battles that raged for hundreds of years between these two nations. It's like predicting that England and France will fight. Of course they will. They always do. That's not prophecy. That's just knowing basic European history. And she predicted the destruction of London. That last one is particularly interesting because decades later, Prince Rupert of the Rhine would cite it while sailing up the Thames after the Great Fire of London in 1666. According to diarist Samuel Pepys, Rupert looked at the ruins, the charred buildings, the smoking wreckage, the devastation, and said, "Now Shipton's prophecy is out." Except London wasn't destroyed. Damaged, yes. Devastated, absolutely. A huge chunk of the medieval city burned. Over 13,000 houses gone. St. Paul's Cathedral destroyed. 87 churches reduced to ash. But London itself survived. It was rebuilt. It continued being the capital of England, just like it had been before. The city lived on. And you could just as easily argue this prophecy was about the Blitz during World War II, or any number of other disasters that have befallen London over the centuries. The Great Plague, the Viking raids, the bombing campaigns, the Great Stink of 1858, when the Thames became so polluted that Parliament couldn't meet because of the smell. Pick your catastrophe. London's had plenty. That's the thing about prophecies written after the fact and phrased in the vaguest possible terms. They're designed to fit multiple events. They're not predictions. They're narratives with built-in escape hatches. They're fortune cookies masquerading as divine revelation. The 1641 pamphlet gives us no sources, no evidence, no explanation for how this information survived 111 years without anyone mentioning it until now. No one in the 1530s wrote about her. No one in the 1540s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Not in the 1600s, 1610s, 1620s, 1630s. Over a century of silence. And then suddenly, in 1641, this pamphlet appears. It's 7 pages of "Trust me, bro," with a side of supernatural spectacle. But here's what's really interesting. This isn't even the strangest part of the Mother Shipton story. Because in 1641, she's just a housewife who made some predictions. She's described as Shipton's wife, indicating she was married, had a relatively normal life. She looks normal, acts normal. She's just unusually good at seeing the future. A bit spooky, but basically a regular person with one weird skill. Like someone who can wiggle their ears or recite the alphabet backwards really fast. Except instead of party tricks, she can see through time. By the 1660s, she's something else entirely. 1 year after the first Mother Shipton pamphlet appeared, another one hit the streets of London. This one was called Two Strange Prophecies, published in 1642. Remember what's happening in 1642. The English Civil War is about to kick off in earnest. King Charles I has fled London. Parliament is raising an army. The country is about to tear itself apart. And this is where Mother Shipton starts to evolve. The pamphlet contains a 22-line rhyming verse. Poetry, not prose. Prophecy dressed up in metre, and rhyme to make it more memorable, more quotable, more shareable. And this verse is incredibly specific. It predicts the Spanish Armada of 1588, that massive fleet of Spanish warships that tried to invade England and failed spectacularly. Ships scattered by storms, the mighty Spanish navy humiliated. The death of Queen Elizabeth and succession of James I in 1603. The end of the Tudor dynasty, the beginning of the Stuart era. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605, Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators trying to blow up Parliament, 36 barrels of gunpowder hidden in a cellar beneath the House of Lords. The plan discovered, the conspirators executed, the death of Prince Henry in 1612. Henry Stuart, Prince of Wales, heir to the throne. He died of typhoid fever at age 18. If he'd lived, England's history would have been completely different. But he didn't, so his younger brother Charles eventually became king. The accession of Charles I in 1625. The king who would eventually lose his head to Parliament's executioners. And the English civil wars beginning in the 1630s. The conflict that was raging even as this pamphlet was being published. This is remarkable. This is shockingly accurate. This is ... Wait, all of this had already happened by 1642. Every single event. This isn't prophecy. This is just history with line breaks. It's a chronicle dressed up as divination. It's like me standing here right now and saying, I predict there will be a global pandemic in 2020. I predict Donald Trump will become president. I predict Afghanistan will fall to the Taliban in 2021. I predict Elon Musk will buy Twitter and rename it something stupid. Wow, such vision. Much prophecy. Please buy my pamphlet. Subscribe to my newsletter. I accept payment in coins and also NFTs. But people bought it. Because the thing about prophecy is that it doesn't have to be real to be powerful. It just has to sound real. It has to feel mystical. It has to tickle that part of your brain that wants to believe someone somewhere, can see beyond the veil of time. And Mother Shipton was perfect for that role. She was from the past, the safely distant past where anything could have happened. She was from Yorkshire, far enough from London to seem exotic and mysterious. She was a woman, which in patriarchal 17th century England made her seem both less threatening and more mystical at the same time. She was the perfect prophet for a country in crisis. Over the next few years, more pamphlets appeared, more prophecies, more predictions about events that had already occurred, dressed up as mystical foresight. In 1645, author William Lilly included Mother Shipton's prophecies in his book, a collection of ancient and modern prophecies. Lilly was a famous astrologer. He cast horoscopes for important people. He made predictions about the Civil War. He was, essentially, a professional fortune teller, and he saw the commercial potential in Mother Shipton. But he didn't add anything new. He just copied what had already been published in the earlier pamphlets. He took someone else's work, slapped his name on it, added it to his own collection, and sold it. In 1651, another version appeared. Same prophecies, same format, same complete lack of new information. The Mother Shipton industry was in full swing. Publishers were making money off her. Astrologers were citing her. People were buying anything with her name on it. And no one seemed bothered by the fact that she was predicting things that were already in every history book, that were already common knowledge, that were already being taught to school children. Because people wanted to believe. They wanted to think that someone, somewhere, had seen this all coming, that the chaos and bloodshed and upheaval of the Civil War had been foretold, that there was some kind of cosmic order to it all. Prophecy offers comfort. It suggests that even the worst disasters are part of some grand plan, that someone knew, that it was meant to be, even if that someone is a fictional witch created by publishers trying to make money off people's fear and uncertainty. But then, somewhere between 1660 and 1670, something changed. A play appeared, a comedy, supposedly, written by Thomas Thompson. It's called The Life of Mother Shipton. The cover page says 1610, but scholars think that's a typo. Someone even scrawled on the bottom of one surviving copy that the date is wrong. It was probably written in the 1660s, not 1610, after the restoration of the monarchy, when theatres reopened and people were hungry for entertainment again. And this play changes everything, because in this play, Mother Shipton isn't just a prophet. She's not just a housewife with unusual gifts. She's the daughter of the devil himself. The play tells the story of a teenage orphan named Agatha Shipton. She's poor, desperate, living in a one-room cottage in Yorkshire, surviving on church charity that she has to beg for. She's the daughter of Solomon Shipton, a ditch digger, the lowest of the low in terms of social class. No prospects, no future, no hope of anything better. One day, she's sitting by a river near Knaresborough, feeling sorry for herself, complaining about her life, about her poverty, about how unfair it all is. And the devil overhears her. He's in disguise, of course. He appears as a handsome young man, well-dressed, charming, everything Agatha has never had and desperately wants. He approaches her, sits down beside her, starts talking to her, sympathizing with her, understanding her in a way no one else ever has. He tells her that her problems can all disappear, that she deserves better, that he can give her everything she's ever wanted. All she has to do is trust him. He says he'll return the next day, and when he does, he brings two other men. Witnesses, he explains, because today he's going to marry her. Agatha should be suspicious. She should ask questions. Who is this man? Why does he want to marry her? What's the catch? But she doesn't. Because she's desperate. Because she's 17 years old and has nothing and no one. Because he's offering her an escape. They go to his house, and it's magnificent. A mansion, servants everywhere, a feast laid out, music playing, everything Agatha has ever dreamed of. They have a wedding ceremony right there, quick, simple. The two witnesses sign their names, and now Agatha is married to this mysterious wealthy man. There's a banquet. She's sitting at the head of the table, wearing beautiful clothes, eating food she's never tasted before. She's playing queen, ordering the servants around, basking in this sudden, impossible luxury. And then, at the height of the celebration, her new husband leans over and whispers in her ear. "I should tell you who I really am," he says. And he reveals himself, his true face, his true nature. He's not a man at all, he's the devil. Agatha should scream, should run, should beg God for forgiveness and protection. But she doesn't. In the play, she thinks about it for a moment, weighs her options, and decides to stay with him. Because even hell with wealth and power is better than poverty and desperation. But when she wakes up in the next scene, everything has changed. She's back in her shabby cottage. The mansion is gone, the feast is gone, the servants are gone, the beautiful clothes are gone. And Agatha herself has changed. Her looks are ruined. She's aged decades overnight. Her skin is wrinkled, her hair is grey, her eyes are sunken. She looks in a mirror and doesn't recognise herself. The devil visits her though. He appears in her cottage regularly now. He chases away the neighbours who come to bother her, who want to know what happened to her, why she looks so different. And he tells her the terms of their marriage. As his wife, she must undertake all manner of unpleasant activities. Murder, witchcraft, prophecy. She must use her new powers, and yes, he's given her powers, to cause chaos and suffering. She must be his agent in the world, his wife, his witch. Later in the play, she's visited by the Abbot of Beverley, a town in Yorkshire. He's worried. The monasteries are being dissolved, Henry VIII is breaking with Rome, the Catholic Church in England is being dismantled. The abbot wants to know what's going to happen, what the future holds, and Agatha, now Mother Shipton, tells him. She makes prophecies about the fall of the monasteries, the rise of Protestantism, the upheaval to come. There are attempts to have her arrested as a witch. People are afraid of her, but she uses her powers to escape, to terrify anyone who tries to stop her. Near the end of the play, though, something changes. Agatha starts to realise what she's become, what she's done, the price she's paid for temporary comfort and escape from poverty. She wants out. She wants to turn away from her devil husband. She wants to save her soul before it's too late. She and her maid, because in this version she has a maid, a companion, someone who stayed with her despite everything, meet with an angel. The angel tells her she can be saved, that it's not too late, that through the Bible, through prayer, through genuine repentance, she can escape her devil husband and reclaim her soul. The play ends with her redemption, with her turning away from evil and toward God. It's a morality play, really, a cautionary tale about the dangers of desperation, of making deals you don't fully understand, of selling your soul for temporary comfort. Now here's what's important. In this play, Agatha is Mother Shipton. She doesn't have a daughter. She's the witch herself. And while she has supernatural powers, while she's married to the devil and performs dark magic, she's also sympathetic, tragic even. She's a victim of circumstance, a poor girl who made a terrible choice because she had no other options, someone who later sought redemption and found it. The play presents her as human, flawed but understandable, dangerous but pitiable. Remember this version, because it's about to change dramatically. And the person who changes it, Richard Head, Irish writer and professional con artist, is about to take this story from tragic comedy to absolute nightmare fuel. In 1677, though the title page claims it might have been published as early as 1667, a pamphlet appears that will define Mother Shipton's story for the next 300 years. It's written by Richard Head, an Irish writer, and it's called The Life and Death of Mother Shipton. The full title goes on for several lines, as was fashionable at the time. They loved long titles in the 17th century. The longer the title, the more legitimate the book seemed. It promises a true account of her strange birth and most important passages of her life, along with all her prophecies, now newly collected and historically experienced from the time of her birth, in the reign of King Henry VII until this present year, 1667. That's quite a claim. A true account, he says. Historically experienced, he says. As if experience and truth are things you can just assert without proof. Head claims he got this information from writings belonging to an old monastery in Yorkshire. Already suspicious, right? Old monastery. Unnamed monastery in Yorkshire. Vague enough to sound plausible, specific enough to sound real. He says some unnamed gentleman whose ancestors had been given this monastery by Henry VIII during the dissolution had kept these documents. They were still legible, he says, still readable after nearly 200 years, and they had been copied out by an impartial hand. No monastery name, no writer's name, no gentleman's name, no copies provided. Just vague references to unnamed sources that conveniently can't be verified because they're in someone's private collection. This should be your first red flag. Actually, this should be about 15 red flags, waving in perfect formation, while alarm bells ring, and a voice on a loudspeaker shouts, "This is obviously made up." But let's see what Head's monastery documents have to say about Mother Shipton. According to Head in 1486, note the year, because it's going to change in later versions, a 15-year-old orphan girl named Agatha Shipton was living in Knaresborough, Yorkshire, near a local landmark called the Dropping Well. She had nothing to her name. She was living off parish charity, which in Tudor England meant you were at the absolute bottom of society. You were one step above starving in a ditch, and Agatha resented it. She hated having to beg, hated having to rely on the church's mercy. She was so bitter about it that she was literally starving herself rather than accept handouts. Pride and poverty make a dangerous combination. One day, sitting under a tree by a river, she's at her lowest point, hungry, angry, desperate, and the devil comes to her. Wait, haven't we heard this story before? Yes, we have. This is almost word for word the plot of Thomas Thompson's play. The devil appears as a handsome young man, promises to make all her problems disappear, says he'll meet with her again the following day, which he does. With a whole host of attendants, he takes Agatha to a beautiful house, marries her, sleeps with her, promises her the world, and then dumps her back in reality with everything gone. It's the same story, beat for beat, the exact same story as the play. Head has read Thompson's play and decided to borrow it, to plagiarise it, to take someone else's fictional work and present it as historical fact backed by monastery documents. Except Head changes one crucial detail. Agatha doesn't become Mother Shipton, she gives birth to Mother Shipton. When Agatha returns from her demonic honeymoon, 2 or 3 days have passed in the real world, though to her it felt longer. Time moves differently in hell, apparently. The neighbours are shocked when they see her. This young girl, who had been plump and fresh, Head's words, not mine, now looks worn out, haggard, exhausted, like she's aged 20 years overnight. Her skin is sallow. Her eyes are hollow. She moves like an old woman, even though she's only 15. She starts acting erratically, talking to herself or to things no one else can see, withdrawing from people, refusing to explain where she's been or what happened to her. The devil continues to visit her, sometimes as a man, sometimes as an animal, a dog, a cat, a bird. He comes and goes as he pleases, and Agatha can't stop him. He's her husband now, for better or worse, till death do them part. Strange things start happening to anyone who bothers her. Anyone who asks too many questions or tries to help her or just annoys her. Their milk goes sour, their animals die, their children get sick, their houses catch fire. She quickly gains a reputation. The neighbours start whispering. She's a witch, they say. She's made a pact with the devil, and then she's arrested, brought before the local justice, probably terrified, probably expecting to be tortured and executed like so many accused witches before her. But she escapes. How? Head says she summons a dragon to carry her away. Let me repeat that. She summons a dragon. A dragon? We're just casually mentioning dragons now, like they're normal. Like summoning a mythical creature to escape custody is something that happens. The justice is questioning her, probably preparing to order her torture, and she just calls a dragon. It swoops down. Head doesn't explain from where, because where do dragons come from exactly? Grabs her and flies away with her, while everyone watches in stunned silence. After that, no one dares to go near her for a while. If you saw someone get picked up by a dragon and flown away, you'd probably give them a wide berth too, until it becomes clear that she's pregnant. Then she's brought before the justice again. This time, they want answers. Who's the father? When did this happen? Why does she look like she's aged 30 years in a matter of weeks? She tells them the truth, or part of it. The father, she says, is not mortal. She's pregnant with the devil's child. Somehow, Head doesn't explain this either. She's released. Maybe the justice doesn't believe her. Maybe he thinks she's insane. Maybe he's afraid of what might happen if he tries to punish her. The pregnancy is difficult. Of course it is. She's carrying something that's half human and half demon. Something that shouldn't exist. The birth is worse. It takes days. Agatha screams and bleeds and suffers. The midwife who's attending her is terrified. Everyone in the village can hear the screaming. And then finally the baby comes. And this is where Head's story becomes truly disturbing. Because unlike the earlier sources that presented Mother Shipton as a normal-looking woman who just happened to make prophecies, Head describes the infant as a monster. Not figuratively, not metaphorically, a literal monster. Let me read you his description. And I want you to remember, this is supposed to be a newborn baby, a human infant. She was of an indifferent height, but very morose and big-boned. Her head very long, with very great goggling, but sharp and fiery eyes. Her nose of an incredible and unproportionable length, having in it many crooks and turnings, adorned with many strange pimples of divers colours, as red, blue and mixed, which like vapours of brimstone gave such a lustre to her affrighted spectators in the dead time of the night, that one of them confessed several times in my hearing that her nurse needed no other light to assist her in the performance of her duty. This is an infant, a newborn baby, and her nose is so deformed, so covered in coloured pimples, that it glows in the dark, bright enough to read by, bright enough to light up a room. Her nose acts as a biological lantern. He continues describing her cheeks as black and yellow like jaundice, wrinkled and shriveled and hollow, so sunken that you could see the impression of her teeth through her cheeks from the outside. Think about that image. A baby whose face is so gaunt that you can see her teeth pressing against the skin from the inside. And then he mentions that 2 of her teeth already stuck out of her mouth, like the lushes of a wild boar or the tooth of an elephant, a thing so strange in an infant that no age can parallel. A baby, born with fully erupted teeth, 2 of them jutting from her mouth like tusks, like weapons. But it gets worse. Somehow it gets worse. Her neck so strangely distorted that her right shoulder was forced to be a supporter to her head, it being propped up by the help of her chin, in such sort that the right side of her body stood much lower than the left, like the reeling of a ship that sails with a side wind. Her body is twisted, deformed, one shoulder higher than the other. Her neck bent at an impossible angle, her head propped up by her own chin, because her neck muscles can't support it properly. She's described like a broken doll, a toy assembled wrong, pieces forced together in ways that shouldn't work, in ways that defy anatomy and physics. Her legs very crooked and misshapen, the toes of her feet looking towards her left side, so that it was very hard for any person, could she have stood up, to guess which road she intended to steer her course, because she never could look that way. She resolved to go. Her legs don't work right. Her feet point the wrong direction. If she could stand, and apparently it's questionable whether she physically could, no one would be able to tell which way she was trying to walk, because her feet point one way and her body faces another. This is a classic description of a fairy tale witch. This is the Halloween costume version, the monster from every child's nightmare, the crone from every cautionary tale, the hook-nosed, wart-covered, hunched, twisted hag that's been used to frighten children for centuries. And Head is presenting her as a real person, a real infant born in 1486 in Yorkshire, a historical figure whose birth was documented in monastery records that totally exist and definitely aren't made up. Think about that for a second, really think about it. If such a child had been born in 1486, or any year in that era, what would have happened? In an age when infant mortality was sky high even for healthy babies, when any abnormality was seen as a sign of God's displeasure or demonic interference, when people believed in changelings, fairy creatures that replaced human babies with monstrous substitutes, when midwives who delivered deformed babies were sometimes accused of witchcraft themselves, would this child have been allowed to live? Would she have been wrapped in soft cloth and placed with a wet nurse and given a chance at life? Or would she have been killed immediately, smothered, drowned, abandoned in the woods? Would the midwife have looked at this thing, this creature, and decided mercy meant ending it quickly before anyone else had to see it? Would her mother have been burned as a witch for giving birth to a monster? The answer is obvious. In the real 16th century, this child would never have survived her first hour. She would have been viewed as proof of demonic interference, as evidence that her mother had lain with Satan himself, which according to Head's story, she had. So he's at least consistent on that point. But Head wants us to believe this child not only survived, but thrived. That she was placed with a wet nurse, that she grew up, that she went to school, that she eventually got married and became famous. It's absurd, transparently absurd, so absurd that it should make you laugh if it wasn't also so disturbing. But we're not done with Head's story yet, because the infant Mother Shipton is just the beginning of the horror show he's creating. So baby Mother Shipton, with her glowing nose, her boar tusks, her twisted body that looks like it was assembled by someone who'd never seen a human before, is placed with a wet nurse. Think about that job interview. Yes, I need someone to care for a demon-spawn infant who glows in the dark and has tusks. Pay is, well, we'll figure something out. No benefits. High chance of supernatural trauma. Any takers? This wet nurse must be either extraordinarily brave, desperately poor, or possibly insane. Maybe all three, because what happens next would send most people running and never looking back. The baby is about 6 months old. The nurse has somehow survived this long caring for her, which is impressive in itself. One day the nurse comes home, having left the infant there unattended, which was apparently just what you did in the 15th century. Babysitters hadn't been invented yet. Child safety standards were more good luck with that than here are 17 regulations. She finds her house completely ransacked, doors flung open, windows shattered, furniture overturned, pottery smashed. Her few belongings scattered everywhere, like a tornado went through the place, or like someone or something was looking for something and didn't care about the mess they made. She's terrified, obviously. Her first thought is robbers, thieves. Someone broke in looking for valuables, found nothing worth stealing, and trash the place in anger. She calls the neighbours for help. Several men come with her to investigate, to make sure the robbers are gone, to help her clean up, to see if anything can be salvaged. They step through the door and immediately hear it. Screeching, high-pitched, inhuman screeching that sounds like cats being torn apart, like nails on slate, like metal grinding against metal, like something that shouldn't be able to make that sound, but is making it anyway. It's coming from everywhere and nowhere, filling the room, filling their heads. The men try to run. Self-preservation kicks in. Every instinct screams at them to get out, to leave, to never come back. But they can't move, because suddenly yokes appear around their necks. Wooden yokes like you'd put on oxen to pull a plough, shaped like crosses, heavy and solid, except they can see through them. They're translucent, ghostly, but when they try to pull them off, to lift them over their heads, they're solid as oak, immovable. The yokes hold them in place like invisible chains, like they're animals being controlled by something they can't see. And then they see her. An old woman materializes in the room, ancient, wrinkled, completely naked, just standing there in the middle of the chaos. And this woman, this apparition, starts hanging upside down from the ceiling. Not from a rope, not from anything, just hanging there by her heels, suspended in mid-air by nothing. They stare. They can't help it, can't look away. This naked old woman floating upside down in front of them, defying every law of nature. Then she shifts. Now she's hanging by her toes, then her midriff, her body contorting in ways that should be impossible, that should break bones and tear muscles. She stays there for half an hour, just hanging, shifting positions, while the men stand frozen with yokes around their necks and the screeching continues, and reality itself seems to be breaking down around them. The neighbourhood women who had followed the men inside suddenly vanish, just gone. The men panic, looking around, calling their names. They search the house, still wearing these phantom yokes that won't let them leave, and they finally find the women in another room. The women are lying face down on the floor, not moving, not responding when the men call their names. Their clothes have been pulled up around their heads, pulled up and over, leaving them completely exposed from behind. Their skirts hiked up, their bodies on display in what must have been a humiliating, terrifying violation. And sitting on their backsides, playing and clawing at them like their toys, are two massive black cats. Not house cats, not normal cats. These are huge, the size of dogs, with yellow eyes that glow in the dim light. The cats are batting at the women with their paws, digging in their claws, playing with them the way a cat plays with a mouse before killing it, having the time of their lives while the women sob and scream. The men rush forward, try to drive the cats away, try to grab them, kick them, anything to make them stop. The cats don't budge, they just keep playing, keep clawing, looking at the men occasionally with those glowing eyes as if to say, "We'll leave when we're ready." Finally, after what feels like hours, the cats get bored. They stretch languidly, yawn, and wander off through a wall like it isn't even there. The women scramble to fix their clothes, sobbing, traumatized. The men try to help them up, to get everyone out of this nightmare house. But before they can escape, the real torture begins. The yokes vanish from their necks. Finally, relief floods through them. But that relief lasts exactly 1 second. Because now, they're forced to dance, all of them. Men and women both. Their legs move without their permission. Their bodies jerk and twist in an obscene parody of a dance. They dance for hours, exhausted, legs cramping, feet bleeding, unable to stop. And while they dance, they feel weight on their shoulders. Something sitting there, riding them like they're horses. When they try to look to see what's there, there's nothing visible, just weight and pressure, and a vague sense of something grinning, something that thinks this is hilarious. Head describes these things as imps in the likeness of monkeys or apes, but they're invisible. The dancers can feel them but can't see them, can't fight what they can't see. Finally, hours later, They're released. The weight lifts. Their bodies stop moving. They collapse, exhausted and terrified. They stumble outside, gasping for air, trying to process what just happened, trying to convince themselves they didn't just hallucinate the entire thing. They tell the other villagers. They're not sure anyone will believe them, but they have to tell someone, have to warn them. And surprisingly, some people believe them, because this is the 15th century and witchcraft is real to them. Demons are real. The supernatural is just part of life. A group of people, either braver or more foolish than the rest, decides to go back to the nurse's house, to check on the child, to make sure she's okay, because in all of this chaos and terror, there's been an infant in the house somewhere, and no one has heard her crying. They enter carefully, warily, expecting more screeching, more cats, more floating old women, but it's quiet now, almost peaceful, until they hear the noises, grinding, like stone on stone, and underneath that, a sound like wind rushing through a tunnel. They follow the sounds, through the ransacked rooms, past overturned furniture, to the fireplace, and there they find her, baby Mother Shipton, in her cradle, floating, 3 yards up, inside the chimney. The cradle is just hovering there, suspended in mid-air, swaying slightly like it's being rocked by invisible hands. And the baby is making those horrible noises, not crying, not screaming, just making sounds that no human infant should be able to make. The villagers stare. They don't know what to do. How do you retrieve a floating baby from a chimney? And then, this is my favourite part, in a horrified, "Can you believe this way?" they just leave her there. With the nurse, they basically say, "Well, she's floating in the chimney again. That's Tuesday for you. Good luck with that, nurse. We're going home. This is your problem now." And the nurse, bless her, stays, either because she's being paid or because she's too terrified to leave, or because she's somehow become attached to this demon infant despite everything. This becomes the child's existence, her normal. The devil visits her every day, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a dog, sometimes as a crow. He brings her gifts, teaches her things, prepares her for her role as his daughter and heir to his dark powers. The nurse is constantly terrorized. Strange noises wake her in the night. Furniture moves on its own. Food disappears before she can eat it. Shadows that don't match any light source move across the walls. She's too afraid to leave, but staying is slowly driving her insane. Eventually, though, the child is old enough to go to school. Let that sink in for a moment. This demonic, physically monstrous, furniture-levitating, devil-visiting child who's been floating in chimneys and summoning cats is sent to regular school with normal children. Not hidden away in a convent, not locked in an attic, not subjected to an exorcism, not killed as an abomination. School, regular school, with other children, children who presumably don't glow in the dark or have tusks. At school she proves to be brilliant, unnaturally brilliant. She can read immediately, without being taught. She picks up writing instantly. She understands mathematics that the teacher has to work out on slate. Her teacher is amazed, and probably terrified. Because this isn't normal childhood aptitude. This is something else. Something that confirms all the dark rumours about this strange deformed child. The other children, however, are not impressed. They're children. They're cruel. They don't care if she's brilliant. They only care that she's different. They tease her relentlessly. For her appearance, the crooked nose, the hunched back, the twisted limbs. For her strange manner of speaking. For the way she smells faintly of sulphur. For the fact that small animals die when she walks past them. They call her names, throw things at her, exclude her from games. Do all the things children do when they encounter someone different and don't have the maturity to handle it with grace. So naturally, she uses her demonic powers to punish them. Head doesn't give us specific details about what she does, which is almost worse than if he did. Our imaginations fill in the blanks. Maybe she makes them sick. Maybe she causes them to have nightmares. Maybe she makes them see things. Maybe she does to them what the cats did to those women in the nurse's house. Whatever she does, it's bad enough that she's finally removed from the school. Only then. Only after she's been using supernatural powers to assault her classmates. Not when she first arrived with her glowing nose and tusks. Not when it became clear she could read minds or predict when the teacher would call on students. Only after she fights back. But by this point, she's becoming famous. Word spreads about this monstrous girl who can see the future. People start coming to her, seeking her out, asking her questions about their lives, their futures, their fortunes, and she answers them. Sometimes truthfully, sometimes cryptically, sometimes in ways that only make sense later. She starts making money from these visitors, enough to support herself apparently. Though Head doesn't explain how a child too young for regular work suddenly has an income and a house of her own. He mentions she's living with the wench, some unnamed young woman who's never explained. Where did this woman come from? Why is she living with a demon child? Is she a servant, a companion, a babysitter brave enough to handle what the nurse couldn't? We never find out. She's just there, existing in the background of the story like a piece of furniture. Head continues with the Cardinal Wolsey story we've already heard. Then he launches into more prophecies covering every major event in English history up through the reign of Charles II in the 1670s, all of which had already happened by the time Head was writing, all of which anyone literate would have known. He ends by saying Mother Shipton lived till she was of an extraordinary age, and that, though she was generally believed to be a witch, yet all persons whatsoever that either read or heard her professed have esteemed them little less than oraculous, and her memory to this day is much honoured by those of her own country. It's complete fiction, obviously, transparently. But here's the thing about Richard Head. Making things up was his specialty, his career, his entire brand. Let's talk about Richard Head for a moment, because understanding who he was helps us understand why this story exploded the way it did, and why people believed it despite all the red flags. Richard Head was born in Ireland around 1637. His father was a Protestant minister who was killed during the Irish Rebellion of 1641, when Richard was just a child. The family lost everything. Young Richard ended up moving to London to make his way in the world, and the way he chose to make his way was through writing, specifically through writing things that weren't entirely true and presenting them as fact. He specialised in a particular kind of book that was hugely popular in the 17th century, supposedly true accounts of extraordinary things that were, in fact, completely fictional. His most famous work was The English Rogue, published in 1665. It was supposedly the autobiography of a criminal, a detailed first-person account of his adventures, his crimes, his close calls with the law. It was scandalous, it was thrilling, it sold incredibly well. It was also completely made up. It was a novel, fiction, but Head presented it as a true account, and people bought it literally and figuratively. He wrote about pirates, highwaymen, con artists, always presented as true stories, always based on real accounts from people who were conveniently dead or unavailable for comment. He also wrote about the mythical island of High Brazil off the west coast of Ireland. In Celtic mythology, High Brazil was a phantom island that appeared once every 7 years. It was supposed to be a paradise, shrouded in mist, inhabited by advanced beings. Head wrote about it like it was a real place that people had visited. He gave detailed descriptions of its geography, its inhabitants, its customs. He cited sources that didn't exist. He made up explorers who had supposedly been there. He was, essentially, a con artist with a printing press. And he was good at it, really good at it. His work sold because it scratched a particular itch that people had. They wanted to believe in mysteries, in hidden islands, in reformed criminals with exciting stories, in witches who could see the future and predict the downfall of cardinals. And Head gave them what they wanted, wrapped in just enough realistic detail to seem plausible. His Mother Shipton pamphlet follows the exact same pattern. He claims to have sources, monastery documents, unnamed gentlemen, impartial hands that copied everything down carefully. He provides dates, 1486 for Agatha's encounter with the devil, 1488 for Mother Shipton's birth. He gives locations, Knaresborough, the dropping well, specific villages in Yorkshire. He names her, first Agatha Shipton, then her daughter, who becomes Mother Shipton. He gives her a biography, a timeline, a life that seems detailed enough to be real. But none of it can be verified, because none of it's real. The monastery documents don't exist. They never existed. The unnamed gentleman is a phantom. The impartial hand is Head's own hand, writing fiction and calling it history. And he got away with it because who was going to check? Who in 1677 had access to monastery documents from the 1400s? Most of the monasteries had been destroyed during Henry VIII's dissolution. Their libraries were scattered or burned. Their records were lost. You can't prove something doesn't exist. You can't prove that somewhere, in some private collection, there aren't monastery documents about a witch named Mother Shipton. All you can do is point out the lack of evidence and hope people are sceptical enough to question the claims. But people weren't sceptical. They wanted the story to be true. They wanted England to have its own legendary prophet, its own mystical figure who could rival the Sibyls of ancient Greece or the oracles of Rome or Nostradamus in France. So they bought Head's pamphlet. They believed it. They repeated it. They told the story to their children and their neighbours. And Head, having successfully launched a legend, probably laughed all the way to the alehouse. He died in 1686, ironically. He drowned while trying to ford a river, possibly drunk. The man who wrote about mythical islands and witches and impossible things met a very ordinary, very preventable death. But his creation lived on. His Mother Shipton outlived him by centuries, became more famous than he ever was. That's the power of a good story. It doesn't matter who wrote it or why. Once it's out in the world, it takes on a life of its own. It evolves, it spreads, it becomes something bigger than its creator ever intended. Richard Head created Mother Shipton as a commercial product, a way to make money off people's fear and fascination with prophecy and witchcraft. But the character he created became real to people, real enough to build tourist attractions around, real enough to put in history books, real enough that even today people argue about whether she existed. That's the ultimate con. Not just fooling people into believing something false, but fooling them so completely that the lie becomes part of the cultural fabric, that it becomes impossible to completely disentangle truth from fiction because they've been woven together for so long. In 1686, the same year Richard Head drowned, another pamphlet appeared. This one is called The Strange and Wonderful History of Mother Shipton, with that characteristically long subtitle promising to plainly set forth her prodigious birth, life, death and burial, with all her famous prophecies, more complete than ever before published. The author is listed only as W.H., printed for someone named J. Conyers in London. We don't know who W.H. was, possibly William Hodges, possibly someone else entirely. They've vanished into history like so many other pamphlet writers of that era. And this pamphlet finally gives Mother Shipton something she's been lacking all along, a first name, Ursula. The demon child now has a full name, Ursula Shipton. Actually, wait, according to this version, her birth name was Ursula Soothtel, or maybe Sontiel depending on which later version you read, or Southiel, or Southill. The spelling shifts across different publications. Shipton came later, from marriage. Soothtel, Sontiel, Southiel, get it? Soothsayer, someone who tells the truth, who prophesies, who sees the future. It's a conveniently prophetic surname for someone destined to become a prophet. Like being named Baker and becoming a baker, or Smith and becoming a blacksmith, except with prophecy. It's like naming your future doctor, Dr. Medicine, or your future lawyer, Sue Everybody. It's too perfect, too on the nose. It screams, I'm making this up and not even trying to hide it. This pamphlet largely follows Richard Head's work, plagiarising whole sections really, but it adds some new details that will become part of the legend. Her mother's name was either Agatha or Emetha. The author isn't sure, apparently. Different sources say different things, they claim, which is convenient when you're making everything up. Her father was variously described as a necromancer, the phantasm of Apollo, or a demon. Take your pick. Choose your own demonic origin story. Mix and match. It's all equally unverifiable anyway. Ursula was born on July 4th, 1488. Note that the year has shifted from Head's 1486. Because consistency doesn't matter in legend building, details can change. The birth happened after a terrible labour that lasted for days. Just as the baby emerged, just as this monstrous thing came into the world, a loud crack of thunder was heard across the countryside. Because of course there was. Every good origin story needs ominous weather. Every demon birth needs atmospheric drama. The sky must announce that something unholy has occurred. She was christened Ursula Soothtel, taking her mother's supposedly prophetic surname. When Ursula was 2 years old enough to walk and talk and demonstrate her powers, her mother realised how evil the child was. She was communing with spirits openly by that point, talking to things no one else could see, making furniture move without touching it, predicting things that came true. So Agatha or Emetha made a choice. She abandoned her daughter, placed her with a nurse with the parish, with anyone who would take her, and went into a convent, the Order of St. Bridget near Nottingham. She would spend the rest of her life there, doing penance for her sin, praying for her soul and for her daughter's soul, trying to undo the damage of that night by the river when the devil took her, trying to save herself before it was too late. Ursula was given to a nurse, and we get the same horror story. The floating cradle, the screeching, the naked woman hanging by various body parts, the massive cats on the women's exposed backsides, the forced dancing with invisible imp monkeys riding on shoulders. But then this version adds something the others didn't, something that makes Mother Shipton seem more human, more relatable, more real. Biographical information about her adult life. She grew up, despite everything. Despite her appearance, her powers, her demonic origins. She survived childhood, which is remarkable in itself given both her condition and the era. And when she was a young woman, 24 years old, she was suspected of using charms or love powder to entrap a man, to make him fall in love with her despite her horrifying appearance. Because apparently, the only way this monstrous, demon-spawned woman could get a husband was through magical coercion. The man's name was Toby Shipton. He was a carpenter, a simple tradesman, someone who worked with his hands for a living. And somehow, some way, he married this woman. This prophetic, demonic, physically monstrous woman with the glowing nose and the twisted limbs, and the powers that terrified everyone who met her. They lived comfortably together, the pamphlet says, though they never had children. Make of that what you will. Maybe demons can't reproduce normally. Maybe Ursula couldn't have children because of her deformities. Maybe they chose not to. Maybe Toby was secretly relieved. Toby Shipton, a carpenter, a man who supposedly lived in Yorkshire in the early 1500s, married to the most famous witch in English folklore. No one bothered to record anything about Toby in contemporary documents. No marriage record? Though parish churches kept such records even then. No tax records, no property records, no will. No mention of him in any letter or diary or chronicle from the period. Not even a gravestone that we know of. He exists only in these pamphlets published in the 1680s, over 150 years after he supposedly lived. He's as much a phantom as she is, a supporting character in a story that needed a husband to make the protagonist seem more human, more normal, more believable. Because if even this monstrous witch could find love and marriage, then maybe, just maybe, the whole story was real. The pamphlet continues with the Cardinal Wolsey prediction we've heard several times now. Same story, same outcome. Then it lists the usual prophecies that had already occurred by the time of publication. And then it gives us something new, an epitaph, a tombstone inscription for Mother Shipton herself. This famous prophetess continued several years esteemed as the Sibyl or oracle of these times. At last, being 13 years of age, she found the time in the Black Book of Destiny approaching, wherein she must give a final adieu to the world, which she foretold to a day to divers people, and at the hour predicted, having taken solemn leave of her friends, laid herself down on her bed and died. She was 73 years old. If she was born in 1488, that means she died in 1561, right in the middle of Elizabeth I's reign. Having predicted the exact hour of her death, because of course she did, she could see the future after all. She said goodbye to her friends, laid down in her bed, and simply stopped breathing. Peaceful, dignified, surrounded by people who loved her, despite her appearance and her powers. A good death, as far as deaths go. And then someone, supposedly a poet, though we don't get a name, wrote this. Here lies she who never lied, whose skill so often has been tried. Her prophecies shall still survive, and ever keep her name alive. It's beautiful, touching even, a perfect ending to a tragic but remarkable life. A woman who never lied about what she saw, whose skills were tested and proven time and again, whose prophecies would outlive her body and keep her memory alive for generations. It's also complete fiction, every word of it. There's no gravestone with this inscription, no tomb in Yorkshire or anywhere else, no church record of her burial, nothing. But by 1686 the legend was set, the story was complete. Ursula Shipton, born 1488, died 1561. Daughter of the devil, married to Toby Shipton the carpenter, famous prophet whose predictions covered over a century of English history. All of it published at least 125 years after she supposedly died. All of it sourced from previous publications that contradict each other in key details. All of it completely absent from any contemporary records from the 16th century itself. And yet people believed. They bought the pamphlets, they repeated the stories, they added their own details and embellishments and interpretations. Because that's what legends do. They grow, they evolve, they become whatever each new generation needs them to be. The story of Mother Shipton didn't end in 1686. If anything, that's when it really took off. Over the following decades and centuries, her legend continued to evolve. It was like watching a character in a role-playing game level up, gaining new abilities and backstory with each campaign. In 1715, another pamphlet appeared with a new twist. In this version, Agatha didn't just go to a convent after giving birth, she died in childbirth. The demon baby killed her on the way out. And that naked woman hanging by her heels, toes and midriff in the nurse's house, that wasn't just some random apparition or demonic manifestation. That was Agatha's ghost, come back to hover in her daughter's presence, unable to rest because of what she'd done, bound to earth by guilt and horror and the knowledge that she'd given birth to a monster. The prophecies kept getting updated too. Each new pamphlet, each new edition, added predictions that had mysteriously been lost or recently discovered in yet more unnamed documents from yet more unnamed sources. Suddenly Mother Shipton had predicted the reigns of William and Mary, who ruled jointly from 1689 to 1694. She'd predicted Queen Anne, who reigned until 1714. She'd predicted the Hanoverian succession, the Jacobite rebellions, every major political event of the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Never mind that these predictions only appeared in print after these monarchs had already died. Never mind that they weren't in any of the earlier pamphlets. Details, details. By the 19th century, the prophecies were getting really creative. Mother Shipton had supposedly predicted telegrams, steel ships, trains. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, transforming England from an agricultural society to an industrial powerhouse. And someone decided that a witch from the 1480s must have seen it all coming. One particularly popular verse that started circulating in the 1860s claimed she said, "Carriages without horses shall go, and accidents fill the world with woe. Around the earth thoughts shall fly in the twinkling of an eye. The world upside down shall be, and gold be found at the root of tree. Through hills man shall ride, and no horse be at his side. Under water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall talk. In the air men shall be seen, in white, in black, in green." Read it carefully. Carriages without horses, that's obviously cars, right? Or trains. Accidents fill the world with woe. Automobile crashes, railway disasters. Thoughts shall fly around the earth, that's the telegraph, or radio, or television, or the internet, depending on which modern interpreter you ask. Through hills man shall ride, tunnels. Under water men shall walk, submarines. In the air men shall be seen, airplanes. It's impressively accurate, isn't it? This 15th century witch predicting 19th and 20th century technology with stunning precision. Except here's the problem. That verse first appears in print in the 1860s. Not the 1480s, not the 1640s when the original pamphlets appeared. Not even the 1700s, the 1860s, after trains had already been running for decades, after the telegraph had been in use since the 1830s and 40s, after steamships had been crossing the Atlantic for years. It's the same trick, played again and again. Make a vague prediction after the fact when you already know what happened. Phrase it poetically so it sounds mystical. Attribute it to your ancient prophet, and watch people marvel at her accuracy. Modern websites and blogs do the same thing. They'll show you that verse and say, "See? She predicted the internet. She predicted airplanes. She saw it all coming centuries before it happened." But if you actually trace the verse back to its source, you find it first appears after most of these inventions already existed. It's not prophecy, it's just history written in past tense and then backdated. And people fall for it because we're wired to see patterns, to make connections, to find meaning in coincidence. You tell someone, "The prophet said thoughts shall fly around the earth," and immediately they think, "The internet, she predicted the internet." Never mind that people in the 1800s talked about ideas and news flying across distances. It was just a metaphor, a common way of describing communication and information spreading quickly. But when you want to believe in prophecy, you'll find it anywhere. You'll interpret vague phrases to match current events. You'll give credit for predictions that were only attributed to the prophet decades or centuries after they were supposedly made. It's confirmation bias on a massive scale, repeated across generations. The Mother Shipton story became a template. Each generation added their own touches, updated her prophecies to make them relevant to their time, published new versions claiming to have discovered lost prophecies or secret documents. Her appearance evolved too. In the earliest pamphlets, she's just a housewife, normal looking. Then she becomes slightly unusual. By the 1670s, she's a monster with a glowing nose and tusks. By the Victorian era, she's the archetypal fairy tale witch. Hooked nose, pointed hat, cackling over a cauldron. Her surname changed too. Soothtel became Sontiel, then Southiel, then Southhill, then back to Soothtel, depending on who was publishing and what sounded most mystical to them. The story became bigger than any individual pamphlet or play. It became part of English folklore, part of the cultural landscape, something everyone knew about, even if the details were fuzzy. And at some point, probably in the late 1600s or early 1700s, though we can't be certain, the legend needed something it had been lacking. A physical location, a birthplace, something concrete that people could visit and point to and say, this is where it all began. Because legends need geography, they need to be anchored to real places to seem real themselves. And someone in Yorkshire realised they had the perfect location. If you visit Knaresborough, Yorkshire today, you can tour Mother Shipton's cave. It's a proper tourist attraction now. Gift shops selling Mother Shipton t-shirts, coffee mugs, postcards. A cafe serving Mother Shipton themed refreshments. I'm assuming that means they're burned and taste like sulphur. Guided tours through the cave itself, where a costumed interpreter will tell you all about the legendary witch who was supposedly born there. They market it as England's oldest tourist attraction. The website claims it's been open to visitors since 1630. This claim is false on multiple levels. Let's count the ways. First, Westminster Abbey has been charging admission and giving guided tours to see the tombs of kings and queens since at least the early 1600s, if not earlier. So has the Tower of London. So have various cathedrals throughout England. But more importantly, there's a glaring timeline problem here. The Mother Shipton legend doesn't appear in any written form until 1641. The earliest pamphlet, the first time her name shows up in print, is from 1641. That's 11 years after this cave supposedly started claiming a connection to her. So either the cave owners were promoting a legend that didn't exist yet in written form, which seems unlikely, or they're backdating their connection by a couple decades to boost their historical credibility and claim that oldest attraction title. What probably happened is this. There was a natural attraction in Knaresborough, a cave and an unusual geological feature called the Petrifying Well. It was interesting enough on its own. Locals knew about it. Maybe a few travellers stopped by to see this odd place, where water seemed to turn things to stone. But when the Mother Shipton legend exploded in the mid-1600s, when pamphlets about her were bestsellers, when everyone was talking about this prophet who'd predicted everything from the Armada to the Civil War, the cave's owners saw an opportunity. The early pamphlets mentioned Knaresborough. They mentioned something called the Dropping Well. The cave and the Petrifying Well were near each other in Knaresborough. Close enough. Why not claim this was where she was born? Why not link your natural wonder to this famous local legend? It's brilliant marketing. It makes the place more mysterious, more memorable, more worth visiting. And really, who's going to contradict you? Who's going to stand up and say, actually, Mother Shipton was born 3 miles east of here in a different cave? No one, because no one can prove she was born anywhere. They can't even prove she was born at all. So the cave became Mother Shipton's cave, the birthplace of the witch, the spot where the devil's daughter first entered the world, on that stormy night in 1488 when thunder cracked across Yorkshire. It's good storytelling, it's good business, and it's been working for over 300 years. The Petrifying Well, though, that's genuinely remarkable, and it's probably the real reason this location was chosen to be Mother Shipton's birthplace in the first place. It's not actually a well, it's a small waterfall, a stream of water flowing over rocks, creating a pool below. And the water has an unusually high mineral content, particularly calcium carbonate, the same stuff that makes up limestone and chalk and seashells. When objects are placed in this water, left in the flow, the minerals gradually coat them. The coating builds up slowly, day by day, week by week, month by month, until the object becomes encased in stone. Petrified. People have been leaving objects there for centuries. Teddy bears, hats, shoes, teapots, even a bicycle. They hang them in the waterfall spray and leave them for months or years. When they come back, the objects are rock hard, transformed, turned to stone by the mineral-rich water. 400 years ago, hell, even today, this looks like magic, like genuine, impossible magic. Water that turns things to stone, water that has some kind of transformative power, some alchemical property. That's exactly the kind of place where a witch might be born, where the boundary between the natural and supernatural seems thin, where impossible things happen. So the cave and the well became part of the legend. They were absorbed into the story. The birthplace of Mother Shipton, the spot where Agatha went into labour, where the devil's child emerged into the world, where the witch who would predict the future first drew breath. Today, there's a statue of Mother Shipton in Knaresborough town centre. She stands there with her crooked nose, her hunched posture, her knowing expression, one hand raised as if in blessing or curse, forever watching the tourists who come to see where England's most famous prophet supposedly lived. She's become an icon, a symbol, a piece of local heritage that brings in revenue and puts Knaresborough on the map. And the truth? The fact that she probably never existed, that doesn't matter to the tourists taking selfies with her statue, doesn't matter to the children buying Mother Shipton candy in the gift shop, doesn't matter to the tour guides who tell her story with enthusiasm and drama. Because legends don't need to be true to be powerful, they just need to be compelling. The Mother Shipton story survives because it touches something primal in us, the desire to believe that someone, somewhere, can see beyond the veil of time. The fascination with dangerous women who have power. The appeal of mysteries that can never quite be solved. The comfort of thinking that even the chaos of history follows some kind of pattern, was predicted, was meant to be. But let's talk about what we actually know. Let's strip away the legend and the tourism and the centuries of elaboration. Let's look at the actual historical evidence, the tiny threadbare shred of it that exists. Here's what we can document about Mother Shipton with contemporary sources, meaning sources from the time she supposedly lived. Documents created in the 16th century when she was allegedly alive and making prophecies. Ready? Here it is. In February 1537, King Henry VIII wrote a letter to the Duke of Norfolk. That's it. That's the entire contemporary evidence. One letter. At this point in history, the Pilgrimage of Grace, a massive uprising against Henry's religious reforms, against the dissolution of the monasteries, was in full swing or had just been put down. Henry was dealing with rebels, traitors, religious agitators, people who dared to question his authority, his break with Rome, his seizure of church property. In this letter, Henry lists various people he wants arrested and brought to him for questioning or execution. Traitors, rebel leaders, priests and monks who encouraged the rebellion. And in the middle of this list he mentions the Witch of York. That's the phrase, exactly as written. The Witch of York. Probably meant to be the Witch of York, but someone's handwriting was unclear or someone made a transcription error. The meaning is clear enough though. A woman in York, apparently, who was supposedly a witch. Someone known well enough, or notorious enough, that Henry didn't need to give her name. Just the Witch of York, and everyone reading the letter would know who he meant. Or would they? Because here's what makes this interesting. What makes this the most crucial detail in the entire Mother Shipton story. In the original letter, the actual physical document that survives in the archives, those words were erased, scratched out, crossed through, removed. Someone, maybe Henry himself, maybe a secretary, maybe the Duke of Norfolk, after receiving the letter, decided that reference shouldn't be there. Why? Was it a mistake? Did no such person actually exist and someone caught the error before the letter was sent? Was the writer thinking of someone else, some other witch in some other town, and got confused? Or was it decided not to pursue this woman, whoever she was, and so her name was struck from the list of people to be arrested? We don't know. We'll never know. What we do know is this. If a witch as famous and powerful as Mother Shipton had existed during Henry VIII's reign, if she'd performed magic in front of the Duke of Suffolk and his companions, if she'd made prophecies that came true and were witnessed by nobility, if she'd been consulted by cardinals and abbots and people from all over England, we would have more evidence. We would have trial records, because witches were tried and trials were documented, especially trials of famous witches. We would have church records. Births, marriages, deaths were recorded by parish churches. If Ursula Soothtel married Toby Shipton, there would be a record. If she was christened in a church, there would be a record. We would have letters from the people who supposedly met her. The Duke of Suffolk was a prolific correspondent. So was Lord Percy. We have dozens of his letters. If they'd met a genuine witch who could predict the future and demonstrated magical powers, don't you think they'd have mentioned it? Don't you think that would have come up in their correspondence with the king, with other nobles, with their families? We would have contemporary chronicles and accounts of her prophecies. If Cardinal Wolsey's failure to reach York was predicted by a local witch, if that prediction was known before he began his journey, chroniclers of the time would have written about it. It would have been sensation, news, a story worth recording. But we have none of that. We have silence for over a century after her supposed death. And then suddenly, in 1641, a pamphlet appears. That's it. That's the entire historical foundation for Mother Shipton's existence. One possibly erroneous reference in a letter from 1537 that was scratched out before the letter was completed. A reference that doesn't even give a name, just the Witch of York. And then nothing for 104 years, until someone in 1641 decided England needed a prophet and invented one. So here we are, over 90 minutes into this story, and what have we learned? Mother Shipton probably never existed. Or if someone like her did exist, some woman in Yorkshire who had a reputation for making predictions, she bore no resemblance to the legend that grew up around her name. The evidence for her existence is one vague, partially erased reference in a letter from Henry VIII that doesn't mention her by name. A series of pamphlets published 80 to 150 years after she supposedly died, each one contradicting the others, each one adding more supernatural elements, each one plagiarizing earlier sources rather than citing any contemporary records. That's it. That's everything. And yet she persists. In tourist attractions, in blog posts, in books, in movies and TV shows, in cultural consciousness, she persists because good stories survive, because mysteries are more compelling than answers, because we want the past to be stranger and more magical than it probably was. Mother Shipton is a testament to the power of narrative over truth, of legend over history, of what we want to believe over what we can actually prove. And maybe that's the most important lesson her story teaches us. Be skeptical. Question the sources. Don't believe something just because it's old or widely repeated or really, really compelling. Look at where the story comes from, when it was first told, who was telling it and why. Look for contemporary evidence, the stuff written while the person was actually alive, by people who actually knew them. And if that evidence doesn't exist, if all you have is stories published decades or centuries later by anonymous authors citing unnamed sources from conveniently unverifiable collections, well, then you don't have history. You have legend. And legend, while entertaining, should never be confused with fact. Mother Shipton teaches us how easily fiction becomes accepted as fact when no one bothers to check. When publishers find profit in prophecy, when our desire for magic overrides our critical thinking, she's a reminder that old doesn't mean true, that widely believed doesn't mean accurate, that popular doesn't mean verified, and she's a warning: always check your sources, always question your assumptions. Don't believe something just because it's been repeated for 400 years, because sometimes the biggest lies are the oldest ones. Sometimes the most elaborate legends spring from the thinnest evidence, Sometimes a 7-page pamphlet published a century too late is enough to create a prophet that outlives empires. So that's the story, the strange, twisted, probably fictional tale of Mother Shipton. Witch, prophet, daughter of the devil, or complete fabrication, depending on which version you read and how much you're willing to believe. A woman who may never have existed, but whose legend has outlived countless real people. A story that started with 7 pages in 1641 and is still being told nearly 400 years later. A mystery with no answer because the question itself might be based on a lie. And maybe that's the most Mother Shipton thing of all. A prophet whose greatest prediction was her own immortality. Not through truth, but through story, through repetition, through the human need for magic in a world that often feels too ordinary, too predictable, too disappointingly devoid of witches who glow in the dark and see the future. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for staying through this whole journey, through medieval prophecy and Renaissance con artists and Victorian embellishments and modern tourism. If you enjoyed this dive into historical mysteries and legendary hoaxes, let me know in the comments what other figures from the past you'd like me to investigate. And remember, just because a story is old doesn't mean it's true. Sometimes the oldest stories are the biggest lies. Sometimes the most beloved legends are built on nothing but air and ink and wishful thinking. Sleep well, and if you dream of prophetic witches with glowing noses and tusks who float in chimneys and summon dragons, remember, they're just dreams, probably.